The bruises on Beatrice Donovan's wrists had faded to a sickly yellow by the time the stagecoach pulled into Oregon City in the spring of 1876. But the memory of how she got them remained sharp as broken glass. She pressed her gloved hands against her lap, willing them to stop trembling as she gazed out at the muddy streets and weathered storefronts of this frontier town that represented her last hope for freedom. "End of the line, madam," the driver called down, his voice rough but not unkind. Beatrice gathered her single carpetbag, everything she owned in the world now, and stepped down onto the wooden boardwalk. The air smelled of pine and rain and possibility. Behind her, 3,000 miles away, lay Boston and the marble-floored mansion that had been her prison for 2 terrible years. Behind her lay Thomas Whitmore, the man whose charming courtship had turned to fists and fury the moment the wedding vows were spoken. Behind her lay the girl who had believed in fairy tales. She was 22 years old, and she was never going back. Oregon City bustled with afternoon activity. Miners fresh from the hills mixed with farmers and loggers, all seeking supplies or whiskey or both. Beatrice clutched her bag tighter, suddenly aware of how out of place she must look in her worn but clearly expensive traveling dress. A woman alone in a frontier town drew attention, and attention was the last thing she needed. "You look lost, miss." Beatrice spun to find a woman perhaps 10 years her senior, wearing a simple calico dress and a warm smile. Her face was weathered by sun and wind, but her eyes were kind. "I'm looking for work," Beatrice said, lifting her chin. "Respectable work. I can read and write, keep accounts, sew, cook, and manage a household." The woman studied her for a long moment, and Beatrice had the uncomfortable feeling she could see every secret written across her face. "Name's Martha Green. I run a boarding house 3 streets over. Could use help with the cooking and cleaning if you're serious about working." "I'm very serious." "Good, because out here, folks pull their own weight or they don't last." Martha picked up a basket of supplies at her feet. "Come on then, I'll show you your room. Meals and lodging included plus a small wage. We can discuss details over supper." Relief flooded through Beatrice so suddenly her knees went weak. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me yet. You haven't tasted my biscuits." Martha started walking and Beatrice hurried to follow. "What should I call you?" "Beatrice. Beatrice Donovan." She had reclaimed her maiden name the moment she fled, though legally she knew she was still Mrs. Thomas Whitmore. The thought made her stomach turn. The boarding house was a 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch and curtained windows that glowed with lamplight as evening approached. Inside, it smelled of coffee and wood smoke and bread. Martha showed her to a small room on the 2nd floor, barely large enough for a narrow bed and washstand, but it had a door with a lock and a window overlooking the street. "Lock works," Martha said, watching Beatrice test it immediately. "And I don't tolerate any nonsense from the boarders." "You'll be safe here." Beatrice's throat tightened. "You're very perceptive, Mrs. Green." "It's Martha, and I've seen enough women come west running from something to recognize the look." She patted Beatrice's shoulder gently. "Whatever you're running from, it's your business. But you're under my roof now, and nobody bothers my girls." That night, lying in her narrow bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier town, Beatrice allowed herself to hope for the first time in months. She had made it west. She had found shelter and work. Perhaps, with time and luck, she could build a new life here where Thomas could never find her. She fell asleep with her hand beneath her pillow, clutching the small knife she had stolen from his study the night she fled. The weeks that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Beatrice rose before dawn to help Martha prepare breakfast for the border's miners mostly, and a few merchants passing through. She scrubbed floors, changed linens, mended clothes, and slowly began to feel the constant fear loosen its grip on her shoulders. Martha treated her with a mixture of maternal affection and practical respect that Beatrice had never experienced before. In Boston, she had been first a daughter to be displayed, then a wife to be controlled. Here, she was simply herself. The boarding house attracted a rotating cast of characters. There was old Samuel, a prospector who paid his rent in gold dust and told elaborate stories about the mountains. There was Bill and Henry, business partners who argued constantly but seemed incapable of functioning apart. There was Doc Patterson, who wasn't actually a doctor but had pulled enough bullets and set enough bones that folks called him that anyway. And then there was Wade Brooks. He arrived on a Tuesday morning in late June, leading a pack mule and looking like he had ridden straight down from the mountains without stopping. He was tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that brushed his collar. His eyes were the color of creek water, clear and steady, and when he looked at Beatrice, she felt seen in a way that was both unsettling and oddly reassuring. "Need a room for a few nights," he said to Martha, his voice low and measured. "Just came down to resupply before heading back up." "You're one of the mountain men," Martha said, not quite a question. "Got a cabin up in the high country. Run cattle and horses up there, do some trapping in winter. Wade Brooks." He tipped his hat politely first to Martha, then to Beatrice, who had frozen in the doorway with an armful of linens. "Rooms $3 a week, meals included," Martha said. "Beatrice here will show you upstairs. Beatrice, you all right?" Beatrice realized she was staring and felt heat flood her cheeks. "Of course. This way, please." She led him up the narrow stairs, acutely aware of his presence behind her. He moved quietly for such a large man, with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in his own skin. She showed him to the corner room, the largest they had available. "Window sticks a bit," she said, setting the linens on the bed. "And the washstand. I've slept on rocks for the past 3 months, madam. This is luxury." She nodded and turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "You're new in town." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "I arrived about 6 weeks ago. Come from back east." Beatrice's spine stiffened. "Why do you ask? Your accent, your hands," he gestured vaguely. "You're working hard to rough them up, but they weren't always that way. And you move like you're expecting something bad to happen at any moment," her breath caught. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." His voice was gentle but firm. "I'm not prying, madam, just observing. My cabin's up in the mountains, about 3 hours' ride northeast. Nobody around for miles except elk and the occasional bear. Safe place if someone ever needed one." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I recognize a hunted look when I see it." He moved to the window, giving her space, looking out at the town below. "I won't ask questions you don't want to answer, but the offer stands, should you ever need it." Beatrice fled, her heart hammering against her ribs. She spent the rest of the day avoiding Wade Brooks, taking her meals in the kitchen while the boarders ate in the dining room. But she couldn't stop thinking about his words, about the strange mixture of understanding and respect in his eyes. That night, she lay awake wondering what kind of man made such an offer to a stranger and expected nothing in return. She found out 3 days later, when Thomas's hired man walked into the boarding house. Beatrice was sweeping the front porch when she saw him ride up, a barrel-chested man in a dusty suit with cold eyes and a hard mouth. Her heart stopped. She knew him. Calvin Reid, Thomas's personal enforcer, the man who had held her arm while Thomas struck her, who had laughed at her tears. She dropped the broom and ran inside, slamming the door behind her. Martha looked up from her knitting, startled. "Beatrice, what on earth? There's a man outside. He's looking for me. Please, Martha, please don't tell him I'm here." Martha was on her feet instantly. Go upstairs. Now." The storage room at the end of the hall has a false panel behind the shelves. "Get in there and don't make a sound." Beatrice ran as the front door opened and heavy footsteps crossed the threshold. She pressed herself into the narrow space behind the shelves, her hands clamped over her mouth to muffle her breathing. She could hear voices below, Calvin's rough Boston accent demanding, Martha's firm denials. "I've got no reason to lie to you, mister. I haven't seen any woman matching that description. Her husband's real worried about her. She took sick in the head, ran off. He just wants her home safe. If she shows up, I'll be sure to let someone know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got work to do. Maybe I should look around just to be sure. This is a respectable boarding house and you've got no authority here. You want to search the place, you get the sheriff to come with a warrant. Otherwise, you can take your business elsewhere." There was a long pause. Beatrice's lungs burned. Then Calvin's voice, lower and meaner. "I'll be back. And when I find her, and I will find her, Mr. Whitmore's going to make sure she never runs again." The door slammed. Beatrice waited, counting her heartbeats, until Martha called up the stairs that it was safe. She emerged shaking to find not just Martha waiting, but Wade Brooks standing in the hallway with his rifle cradled loosely in his arms. "He's gone," Wade said. "Rode back toward Portland, but he'll be back like he said." "You heard," Beatrice whispered. "Whole house heard, thin walls." Wade leaned the rifle against the wall. "That man's a bounty hunter. I've seen his type before. He won't give up easy." Martha put her arm around Beatrice's shoulders. "Tell us what we're dealing with, honey." So Beatrice told them. About Thomas Whitmore, Boston's golden son, heir to a banking fortune. About the courtship that had been all roses and poetry. About the wedding night when he had first shown his true nature. About 2 years of walking on eggshells, of hiding bruises, of becoming smaller and quieter until she almost disappeared entirely. About the night 6 weeks ago when Thomas had beaten her unconscious, and she had woken to find him passed out drunk beside her, and she had known it was run or die. "I took what money I could find and bought a train ticket west," she finished, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought if I could get far enough away, he would just let me go. But Thomas doesn't let go of what he considers his." Wade's jaw was tight, a muscle jumping beneath the stubble. "And this Calvin Reed is his hunting dog. Thomas has money and connections. He'll have filed legal papers, probably claiming I'm mentally unstable. On paper, he has every right to retrieve his wife." The word tasted like poison in her mouth. "Not out here, he doesn't," Martha said firmly. "Oregon's got different ideas about things than Boston does. But the law's back in town. The mountains don't care about Boston law." Wade met her eyes. "That offer I made still stands. My cabin's remote. Nobody knows about it except a few trappers and the Nez Perce families who summer in the high valleys. You'd be safe there. I can't ask you to do that. You don't even know me." "I know enough." Wade's voice was calm, certain. "I know you're brave enough to run 3,000 miles alone. I know you're working honest to make your own way. And I know that no man has the right to put fear in a woman's eyes the way that Hunter put it in yours. Wade runs cattle up in those mountains," Martha added. "He could use help with the domestic side of things. Cooking, preserving food for winter, mending. It would be legitimate work, Beatrice, and you'd be out of reach. I don't understand why you would help me." Wade was quiet for a moment, looking past her toward the window. "My mother ran from my father when I was 15. He was a mean drunk, and one night he went too far. She took me and my sister and we disappeared into the night. A mountain man named Jack Finch found us half frozen in the foothills and took us in. Taught me everything I know about surviving up there. Taught me that sometimes the best thing you can do is give someone a safe place to heal. What happened to your father?" He came looking once. Jack and the Nez purse made it clear he wasn't welcome. He never came back. Wade's eyes returned to hers. I promised myself then that if I ever had the chance to do what Jack did for us, I would. So here's that chance. You can stay here and hope Calvin Reed gives up, or you can come with me tomorrow morning and disappear into the mountains. Beatrice looked between Wade and Martha, these two strangers who had shown her more kindness in minutes than Thomas had in 2 years. The smart thing would be to refuse, to not get involved, to keep running on her own. But she was so tired of running. And something in Wade's steady gaze made her feel, for the first time since she could remember, like she might actually be safe. "I'll pack my things," she said. They left before dawn, slipping out of Oregon City while the streets were still empty. Wade had a sturdy mare for Beatrice and a pack mule loaded with supplies. They rode northeast into the foothills as the sun broke over the Cascade Peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Beatrice had never been on a horse for more than a brief trot around a city park. Within an hour, her legs ached. Within 2 hours, she was certain she would never walk again. But she didn't complain. Wade set a steady pace, checking on her frequently but not hovering, giving her the dignity of struggling without being coddled. They stopped to water the horses at a clear stream around mid-morning. Wade handed her a canteen and a piece of dried meat. "How are you holding up?" "I'll manage." She tried to stand and her legs nearly buckled. Wade caught her elbow, steadying her. "It gets easier. Another hour and we'll be at the cabin. You can rest there." He released her arm quickly, as if aware that touch might be unwelcome. "Mr. Brooks, Wade. Wade, I want you to know I'm not helpless. I know I must seem like some fragile city girl, but I can work. I can earn my keep." Never doubted it. He smiled slightly, the first real smile she had seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard lines. "You left everything you knew with nothing but a carpetbag and built a new life in 6 weeks. That's not fragile. That's steel." The compliment warmed something cold inside her chest. "Thank you." "No thanks needed. Come on, let's get you home." Home. The word echoed strangely. Beatrice had never had a home, she realized. She had lived in houses, grand ones, but they had never been home. They had been stages where she played the role of dutiful daughter, then dutiful wife. Home suggested safety, belonging, choice. Home suggested a place where she could simply be. The cabin appeared as they crested a rise, nestled in a meadow surrounded by towering pines. It was built of logs chinked with mud, with a stone chimney and a covered porch. Behind it, a small barn and corral housed several horses. Beyond that, mountains rose in layers of green and gray and purple, touching a sky so blue it hurt to look at. "It's beautiful," Beatrice breathed. "It's home." Wade dismounted and came to help her down. Her legs trembled as she found solid ground. "Come inside. I'll get the horses settled and then start on supper." The cabin's interior was a single large room with a sleeping loft above. The furniture was rough but well made: a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair near the stone fireplace, shelves lined with books and supplies. The floor was wood, worn smooth and kept scrupulously clean. A ladder led to the loft above. "You'll take the loft," Wade said, following her in with her carpet bag. "I'll sleep down here. There's blankets and a good thick mattress up there. I'll string a curtain for privacy." "Where do you usually sleep?" "The loft. But it's no hardship to sleep by the fire. Done it plenty of times." He set her bag at the base of the ladder. "I'm going to see to the animals. There's a pump outside if you want to wash up. Make yourself comfortable." After he left, Beatrice climbed the ladder to explore the loft. It was cozy under the sloped roof, with a real bed piled with wool blankets and furs. A small window looked out over the meadow. She could see Wade moving between the barn and corral, his movements efficient and sure. She sat on the edge of the bed, testing it, and suddenly tears came, hot and unexpected. She was safe. For the first time in 2 years, she was truly safe. Thomas didn't know where she was. Calvin Reed couldn't find her here. And Wade Brooks, this stranger who owed her nothing, had given her sanctuary without asking for anything in return. The question that haunted her was why. In her experience, men always wanted something, always took something. What would Wade expect from her when the gratitude wore thin and the reality of living together set in? She dried her eyes and climbed back down, determined to make herself useful. By the time Wade returned, she had found the basic supplies and was attempting to start a fire in the hearth. "Here," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "The wood's still a bit green. You need kindling first, like this." He showed her how to build the fire, his hands deft and patient. When the flames caught, he sat back on his heels with satisfaction. "There. Now you know." He moved to the shelves and began pulling down supplies. "How are you with cooking?" "I managed a household staff of 12 in Boston, but I'm better at giving directions than executing them myself." "Then I'll teach you." He set a pot on the table along with potatoes and dried beef. "Out here, you need to know how to do everything yourself. Can't rely on staff or stores, but it's simpler than you might think." They worked together as the evening light slanted through the windows. Wade showed her how to prepare a basic stew, explaining which herbs grew wild nearby and could be added for flavor, how to tell when meat was cooked through, how to keep a pot from burning. He was a natural teacher, clear and unpatronizing, treating her like a student rather than an incompetent child. As they ate, Beatrice found herself studying him across the table. He was probably near 30, she guessed, though life in the mountains had left its marked sun lines around his eyes, a thin scar across his left forearm, calluses on his palms. His hands were never quite still, always working, whittling a piece of wood while they talked or mending a piece of leather tack. "Tell me about your life up here," she said. Wade shrugged. "Not much to tell. I run about 60 head of cattle in the high meadows during summer, bring them down to the lower valleys before first snow. Keep a dozen horses, sell off the foals every year, do some trapping in winter, hunt for meat. It's a simple life, but it's mine. Don't you get lonely sometimes?" "But I've never been much for crowds. After we left my father, my mother remarried a good man. My sister has a family in Idaho. I visit once a year or so, but this is where I belong." He met her eyes. "Some people are born to be around others. Some of us are born for the mountains." "Which do you think I am?" "I think you're someone who needs time to figure out who you actually are without someone else telling you." He collected their bowls and carried them to a wash basin. "You've been performing your whole life, I reckon. First as the proper Boston daughter, then as the obedient wife. Out here, there's nobody to perform for. You can just be." His perceptiveness was unsettling. "You see a lot for someone who just met me. I'm used to reading animals and weather. People aren't that different. You show what you're feeling if someone knows how to look." That night, Beatrice lay in the loft listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness. Owls called in the darkness. The wind sighed through the pines. Below, she could hear Wade moving around, settling in by the fire. She waited for anxiety to come, for the fear that had been her constant companion. But instead, wrapped in warm blankets in this remote cabin, she felt only a deep, bone-weary relief. She slept dreamlessly for the first time in months. The days developed a rhythm. Wade rose before dawn to tend the animals and check on the cattle grazing in the high meadows. Beatrice took over the domestic chores, learning through trial and error how to cook on the hearth, how to preserve meat by smoking, how to identify edible plants growing wild near the cabin. Wade was patient with her mistakes, teaching without judgment. He kept his promise about respecting her space. He never touched her except when necessary, helping her onto a horse, guiding her hand on a knife when teaching her to skin a rabbit. He never asked about Boston or Thomas or what she had endured. He gave her the gift of silence when she needed it and conversation when she was ready. Slowly, the constant tension in Beatrice's shoulders began to ease. She found herself laughing at Wade's dry observations about the livestock. She started sleeping without the knife under her pillow. She began to take pleasure in small things: the taste of coffee in the morning, the sight of elk crossing the meadow at dusk, the feeling of accomplishment when she successfully baked bread in the hearth's Dutch oven. And gradually, almost without realizing it, she began to notice Wade in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude or fear. The way his eyes crinkled when he was amused, the competent strength in his hands as he worked, the gentleness with which he treated the horses, talking to them softly while he brushed them down. The way he looked in the early morning light, bare-chested at the wash basin, water sluicing over tanned skin and lean muscle. That last observation made her blush and turn away, confused by the warmth that spread through her belly. She had thought herself broken in that way, incapable of seeing a man as anything but a threat. But Wade stirred something different in her, something she had no name for. A month passed. July heat settled over the mountains, though the nights remained cool. Wade taught Beatrice to ride properly, taking her along when he checked on the cattle. She learned to move with the horse rather than against it, to read the terrain, to spot signs of predators. The high country was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache: vast meadows thick with wildflowers, crystalline lakes reflecting the sky, peaks that seemed to touch the clouds. This was worth leaving everything for, she said one afternoon as they let the horses drink from a stream. I never knew places like this existed. Wade dismounted and came to help her down, his hands careful on her waist. The mountains are honest. They don't pretend to be something they're not. I appreciate that about them. She was very aware of his hands, even through the layers of her riding skirt. Is that why you stay up here? Because everything's honest? Partly. Mostly it's because I get to decide my own life. Every choice is mine. Nobody owns me, nobody controls me. That's worth more than gold. He released her and stepped back, but his eyes remained on hers. You understand that now, I think? I'm beginning to. She sat on a sun-warmed rock, letting her legs rest. I keep waiting for the fear to come back. Every day I think I'll wake up and be that terrified woman again, but I don't. I feel like I'm becoming someone new, not someone new. Someone you always were underneath. Wade sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. You were never the woman your husband tried to make you. You were always this person, brave and strong and capable. You just had to have the space to remember. How did you become so wise about these things? Watching my mother. After Jack Finch took us in, she healed. It took time, but gradually the woman who loved to laugh and sing came back. She became herself again, the person she was before my father tried to crush that spirit. You remind me of her. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. I hope I can be that strong. You already are. They sat in companionable silence, watching the horses graze. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. The stream chuckled over stones, and Beatrice felt something shift inside her, like a door opening onto a room she had forgotten existed. She was falling in love with Wade Brooks. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. That evening, as they prepared supper together, Beatrice found herself studying Wade's profile in the firelight. He was explaining something about the best time to harvest wild onions, his voice low and measured, and she barely heard a word. She was too busy noticing the way his hair fell across his forehead, the way his hands moved with such certainty, the way he existed in space without dominating it. "Beatrice, you all right?" she blinked. "What? Yes, sorry, I was just thinking. About you, about how safe I feel with you, about how much I want to touch you and how terrifying that desire is, about how different this life is from Boston. Do you miss it at all? The city?" "Not even a little. There are things I miss: good books, music, art, but not the life itself. That was a cage with gilded bars." She chopped vegetables with more force than necessary. "I spent 20 years trying to fit myself into the shape people expected. Out here, nobody expects anything. It's liberating. You can be whoever you want to be." "Can I?" She set down the knife and turned to face him. "What if who I want to be is someone who stays here? Someone who doesn't go back to town, who makes a life in these mountains? Would that be possible?" Wade went very still. "Are you saying you want to stay? Permanently? I don't know. Maybe. If that would be all right, I know this is your home and I'm an imposition. You're not an imposition." His voice was rough. "Beatrice, you can stay as long as you want, forever if that's what you choose. I just want you to be sure. Winter up here is harsh. You'd be even more isolated than now. It's not an easy life. I'm not afraid of difficult. I'm only afraid of going back to being trapped." She took a breath, gathering courage. "And I'm afraid of being a burden to you. Of you regretting this kindness." Wade crossed the small space between them, stopping close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "Listen to me carefully. You are not a burden. You have never been a burden. Having you here has been." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "It's been good, really good. This cabin feels more like a home with you in it, but I need you to understand something." "What?" "I meant what I promised when I first brought you here. No man will touch you again unless you want it. That includes me. You're safe here, Beatrice, from everyone, including me. I will never, ever expect anything from you beyond what you freely choose to give." His words should have reassured her. Instead, they made her bold. "What if I choose to give something? What if I want to?" The muscle in Wade's jaw tightened. "Then I would need to be very sure you mean it, that it's not gratitude or obligation making you feel like you should." "It's not obligation." Her heart pounded so hard she was certain he could hear it. "Wade, I've spent the last month watching you, learning from you, and I've realized something. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid when you're near me. I'm not afraid when you touch me, even accidentally. Do you understand how miraculous that is? After Thomas, I thought I would never feel safe with a man again, but I do with you. Beatrice." Her name was almost a groan. "I'm not saying I'm ready for everything. I'm not even sure what I'm ready for, but I need you to know that what I feel for you isn't gratitude. It's something deeper, something I didn't think I was capable of feeling." Wade reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers were gentle, barely a whisper against her skin. "I've been trying real hard not to feel what I feel for you. Telling myself I was just giving you safe harbor, that it wouldn't be right to want more. But God help me, Beatrice, I do want more. I want everything, but only when you're ready. Only if you're sure. Kiss me," she whispered. "Please. I need to know if I can do this without fear." Wade cupped her face in his hands, his calloused palms warm against her cheeks. He bent slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and touched his lips to hers with a gentleness that made her eyes sting. It was nothing like Thomas's brutal kisses. This was soft and questioning and full of restrained desire. This was a man who saw her as precious, not property. Beatrice leaned into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest against Wade's chest. She could feel his heart hammering beneath her palms, could feel the tension in his body as he held himself in check. When he pulled back, his eyes searched her face. "Are you all right?" "I'm perfect." Tears slipped down her cheeks and she laughed, surprised by the joy bubbling up inside her. "Wade, I'm perfect. I wasn't afraid. Not for a second." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and she felt him shaking slightly. "Thank God. You have no idea how terrified I was that I would scare you." They stood together in the firelight, holding each other, and Beatrice felt pieces of herself clicking back into place. She was not broken. Thomas had not destroyed her capacity to feel desire, to want to love. Wade had shown her that with his patience and respect and careful kindness. "We take this slow," Wade said against her hair. "As slow as you need. No pressure, no expectations. We have all the time in the world." "All the time in the world," she echoed, and it sounded like a promise. August brought cooler nights, and the first hints that summer was beginning its slow fade toward autumn. Beatrice and Wade fell into a new rhythm, one that included stolen kisses in the morning light and hands held while walking together in the meadows. Wade courted her slowly, his patience infinite, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. He taught her to shoot, his body warm behind hers as he showed her how to sight along the rifle barrel. He showed her how to fish in the clear mountain streams, laughing when she squealed at touching the slippery trout. He took her to a hidden waterfall where they swam in water so cold it stole her breath, and afterward lay on sun-warmed rocks like lizards, drying off while they talked about everything and nothing. They talked about his childhood in the mountains, learning survival from Jack Finch and the Nez Perce families who had been his neighbors. He talked about his mother's strength, how she had rebuilt her life from nothing, and taught him that kindness was not weakness. He talked about his sister, who wrote him letters that sometimes took months to arrive, full of news about her children and her happy marriage to a rancher. Beatrice talked about her own childhood, the suffocating expectations of Boston society, the way her parents had seen her as a commodity to be traded for social advancement. She talked about the early days with Thomas, how charming he had been, how completely he had fooled her. She talked about the gradual realization that she had married a monster, the years of walking on eggshells, the final desperate flight. "You think he's still looking for me?" she asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching stars emerge. "Probably. Men like that don't like to lose." Wade took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "But he'll never find you here, and if he does somehow, he'll have to go through me first. I don't want you to have to fight my battles. It wouldn't be just your battle. Anyone who threatened you would be threatening my home and my peace. That makes it my battle too." He squeezed her hand gently. "But I don't think it will come to that. Calvin Reed has no reason to think you came up into the mountains. For all he knows, you went to San Francisco or Seattle or kept traveling east. The trail's gone cold." Beatrice wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But sometimes at night she would wake from dreams of Thomas finding her, dragging her back to Boston, and the terror would be so real she could taste it. On those nights, Wade seemed to sense her distress even from his bedroll by the fire. He would talk to her softly through the darkness, his voice a steady anchor, until her breathing calmed and she could sleep again. "You're so patient with me," she said one morning over coffee. "Don't you ever get frustrated with how slow I am to trust completely?" "Trust isn't something you can rush. It's earned in inches, not miles." Wade refilled her cup from the pot on the hearth. "Besides, I'm a mountain man. Patience is what we do. You can't rush the seasons or the wildlife or the weather. You learn to move at the pace things naturally take." "I want to be ready for more. I want to not be afraid." "You're not afraid of me. That's enough for now." "But you must want," she blushed, unable to finish the sentence. Wade knelt beside her chair, taking her hand. "Of course I want you. I'm only human, Beatrice. But I want you willing and sure and joyful, not anxious and forcing yourself." That's not something I would ever want to take. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll know. Until then, I'm happy exactly as we are." She cupped his face with her free hand, marveling at the rough stubble beneath her palm, at her own lack of fear. "How did I get so lucky to find you? Pretty sure I'm the lucky one." He kissed her palm and stood. "Come on, I want to show you something." He saddled the horses and they rode out, climbing higher into the mountains than Beatrice had been before. They followed a narrow trail through dense forest until they emerged onto a ridge that looked out over a vista so beautiful it stole her breath. Mountains rolled away in every direction, a sea of green and gray beneath an impossibly blue sky. A hawk circled below them, and in the far distance, she could see a ribbon of silver that might have been a river. "This is my favorite place in all the world," Wade said, dismounting and helping her down. "I come up here when I need to think, to remember how big the world is and how small my problems are in comparison. It's magnificent. I wanted you to see it. To understand why I love this life so much, why I would never leave." He turned to her, serious. "Because if you stay, Beatrice, this is what you're choosing. This isolation, this wildness, this distance from civilization. I need you to understand what you would be giving up." "I'm not giving up anything important. I'm choosing what I want for the first time in my life." She took his hands. "Wade, I don't want to go back to civilization. I don't want society or fancy dresses or dinner parties. I want this. I want the mountains and the simplicity and the freedom. I want you. You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." Wade pulled her close and kissed her, deep and thorough, his arms strong around her. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire but also something deeper, something that looked like love. "Marry me," he said. "Properly, legally, as soon as we can arrange it. I want you to be my wife, Beatrice. Not because I need you or own you, but because I love you and I want us to choose each other every day for the rest of our lives." Joy burst through her like sunshine. "Yes. Oh yes, Wade. Yes." They rode back to the cabin holding hands, laughing like children. That night, Beatrice came down from the loft and settled beside Wade near the fire. They lay wrapped together in blankets, kissing and touching over clothes, learning each other's boundaries and desires. Beatrice marveled at how different it was to be touched with reverence instead of violence, to feel her body respond with pleasure instead of pain and fear. "We should wait until we're married," Wade said hoarsely when things threatened to spiral beyond control. "I want to do this right." Always so honorable. But Beatrice appreciated his restraint even as her body protested. There would be time. They had all the time in the world. The next morning they discussed logistics. They would have to go into Oregon City to arrange the marriage, which meant risk. But Wade was confident that enough time had passed and that Calvin Reed had moved on. They would go in quietly, get married by the justice of the peace, file the necessary papers, and return to the mountains. "Once we're married, you'll be Beatrice Brooks legally," Wade said. "Even if Thomas somehow tracked you down, you'd be my wife by Oregon law. That would complicate things considerably for him." "Would it be enough? If he claimed I was mentally unstable and showed paperwork proving I was his wife first?" "Oregon's got laws about domestic situations. And out here, possession is 9/10 of the law. You're living as my wife in my home on my land. That counts for something." It wasn't perfect protection, but it was better than nothing. And Beatrice refused to let fear of Thomas keep her from claiming the life she wanted. They rode down to Oregon City on a crisp September morning. Martha Green greeted them with delight when they appeared at the boarding house, pulling Beatrice into a fierce hug. "I was so worried. You disappeared without a word. I'm sorry. I couldn't risk anyone knowing where I went, even you." "Well, you look healthy and happy, so I won't scold." Martha looked between them shrewdly. Something's different. What happened? We're getting married, Beatrice said, and couldn't keep the smile from her face. Today, if we can arrange it. Martha whooped and hugged them both. I'll stand witness. Let me get my good shawl. Oh, this is wonderful news. The justice of the peace was a practical man who asked no uncomfortable questions. Within an hour, Beatrice found herself standing in his office with Wade beside her, Martha beaming in the background, and a signed marriage certificate in her hands that read, Wade Thomas Brooks and Beatrice Ann Donovan, joined in matrimony this 15th day of September, 1876. She was married. Again. But this time the ring on her finger felt like freedom instead of shackles. They celebrated with dinner at Martha's boarding house, and Beatrice told her the whole story of the summer in the mountains. Martha listened with shining eyes, occasionally reaching over to pat Beatrice's hand. You deserve this happiness, honey. After everything you've been through, you deserve a good man and a good life. I keep waiting for something to go wrong, Beatrice admitted. It feels too good to be real. That's just old fear talking. You push it away and enjoy what you've got. Martha turned to Wade. You take good care of her up there in those mountains. With my life, Wade said simply, and Beatrice knew he meant it. They spent one night in Martha's best room, and Beatrice finally surrendered the last of her fear. Wade made love to her with a gentleness that brought tears to her eyes, patient and careful and focused entirely on her pleasure. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt remade. Thomas had not broken her. She was whole and alive and capable of joy. I love you, she whispered into the darkness. I don't think I ever said it out loud, but I do, Wade, I love you. I love you too, he kissed her forehead. My wife. The word no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a choice. They left Oregon City before dawn, eager to return to the mountains. The ride back felt different now, like going home in truth, not just to a temporary refuge. Beatrice sat taller in the saddle, feeling the weight of the ring on her finger and the happiness in her heart. But as they climbed into the foothills, Wade suddenly pulled up short, his hand raising in warning. Beatrice stopped beside him. What is it? Smoke. From the direction of the cabin. His face had gone hard. Too much smoke for just the hearth. They urged the horses faster, taking the trail at a dangerous pace. As they crested the final rise, Beatrice's heart sank. The cabin still stood, but the barn was a smoking ruin. Their horses were gone, and standing on the porch, rifle in hand, was Calvin Reed. There you are, he called out. Was starting to think you weren't coming back. Mrs. Whitmore. Wade's hand moved toward his rifle, but Calvin was faster, his weapon already aimed. I wouldn't. I'm a crack shot, and I'll put a bullet in your wife before you clear the saddle. Leave her alone. Wade's voice was deadly calm. Whatever business you have, it's with me now. That right, because last I checked, this woman is legally married to Thomas Whitmore of Boston. What she's doing playing house with you is kidnapping and adultery, mountain man. She's my wife. Wade slowly dismounted, hands visible. Legally married yesterday by the justice of the peace in Oregon City. I've got the papers to prove it. Calvin's face darkened. That don't mean nothing. Her first marriage still stands. Not in Oregon, it doesn't. Oregon recognizes legal separation and remarriage. Beatrice dissolved her marriage to Whitmore by abandonment and married me. It's legal and binding. Thomas isn't going to accept that. Thomas doesn't have a choice. Wade moved to help Beatrice down, putting himself between her and the rifle. You can ride back and tell him his wife is gone. Or you can try to take her, and I promise you won't leave this mountain alive. Big talk from one man. You'd be surprised what one man can do in his own territory, and these mountains are mine. I know every trail, every hiding spot, every place you could run. You wouldn't make it a mile. Calvin's eyes shifted, calculating. Beatrice could see him weighing his options, the money Thomas had surely promised for her return versus the very real threat Wade presented. Finally, he lowered the rifle slightly. Thomas paid me $500 to find her. I don't much care who she's married to, but I'm not going back empty-handed. Wade reached into his saddle bag and pulled out a leather pouch. There's $300 in gold here, enough to make the trip worth your while. Take it and ride out. Tell Thomas she's dead if you want. Tell him she remarried. Tell him whatever you need to, but leave her be. Why should I believe you won't come after me? Because I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in being left alone with my wife. You take that gold and go, and as far as I'm concerned, we never met. Calvin considered, then held out his hand. Wade tossed him the pouch. The bounty hunter tested its weight, nodded. I'll tell Thomas she died on the trail. That should satisfy him. He tucked the pouch into his coat and mounted a horse that Beatrice recognized as one of Wade's. Woman, I hope he's worth what you gave up. He's worth more than Thomas ever was. Calvin shook his head and rode off, disappearing into the trees. Wade and Beatrice stood frozen until the sound of hooves faded completely. Is he really gone? Beatrice whispered. Yeah. Men like that honor deals when it suits them, and taking gold for no work suits him fine. Wade pulled her into his arms. But we'll need to rebuild the barn and track down the horses. And I want to file those marriage papers officially with the territorial office, make it harder for anyone else to come sniffing around. He burned the barn, just to show he could, to make a point. Wade surveyed the damage. Could have been worse. The cabin's intact, and we can rebuild the barn before winter. We'll be all right. They spent the rest of the day salvaging what they could from the barn and rounding up the horses, who had scattered but not gone far. That night, exhausted and smoke-stained, they collapsed into bed together. I'm sorry, Beatrice said. He came because of me. The damage, stop. None of this is your fault, and it's over now. Calvin will tell Thomas whatever story keeps him paid, and that'll be the end of it. Wade pulled her close. We're safe, Beatrice. We're married. We're home. Nothing else matters. She wanted to believe him. And as the days passed and no one else came, as they rebuilt the barn together and brought the last supplies up from town before the first snow, she began to. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing the mountains in white by late October. Beatrice learned what Wade had meant about isolation. Some weeks they went without seeing another soul, snowbound in the cabin with only each other for company. She learned to love the quiet, the way the snow muffled sound and created a cocoon of peace. She learned to bake bread and make soap and card wool from the sheep Wade kept. She read his books by firelight and taught him the finer points of chess, which he picked up with alarming speed. And she learned what it meant to be married to a man she loved. Wade was an easy partner, comfortable with silence but ready to talk when she needed it. He never demanded, never pushed, never made her feel small. He treated her as an equal, asking her opinion on decisions, teaching her skills without condescension, splitting the work of survival according to ability rather than gender. They made love in front of the fire and in the loft under a mountain of furs, learning each other's bodies and desires with the leisure of people who had all the time in the world. Beatrice marveled at the pleasure her body could feel, at the way Wade could make her forget everything except the present moment. She had not known marriage could be like this, a partnership of equals, a meeting of both minds and bodies, a choice renewed every day. Are you happy? Wade asked her one night as they lay tangled together, watching firelight flicker across the ceiling beams. Happier than I knew was possible. Are you? Never thought I'd want to share my life with anyone, but having you here makes everything better. He kissed her shoulder. You're stuck with me now, Mrs. Brooks. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. Spring came late, but when it finally arrived, it was glorious. The snow receded to reveal meadows bursting with wildflowers, and Beatrice felt like she was seeing the world reborn. Wade took her higher into the mountains, showing her secret valleys and pristine lakes, teaching her the rhythms of the wild. And one morning in late April, she woke feeling strange and realized with sudden clarity what it meant. Wade. He was still half asleep beside her. I think I'm pregnant. He was fully awake instantly, pushing up on one elbow to look at her. Are you sure? Pretty sure. I've been feeling odd for a few weeks now, but I thought it was just the change in diet or something. But I'm late, and this morning I felt sick and... She put a hand on her stomach. I think there's a baby. A smile spread across Wade's face, slow and wondering. A baby, our baby. Are you happy about it? I know we didn't plan, he kissed her, cutting off the anxious words. I'm thrilled, terrified but thrilled. You, the same. I never thought I would want children after. She stopped. She didn't talk about Thomas much anymore. He was a ghost from another life, fading more each day. But this is different. This baby will be born from love, raised by parents who chose each other. That makes all the difference. They told Martha when they rode down to Oregon City for supplies in June. She wept with joy and immediately began knitting baby blankets. Doc Patterson, who was actually a trained physician despite his humble nickname, examined Beatrice and declared her healthy and the baby progressing well. You'll want to come down to town when your time approaches, he said. Just to be safe, first babies can be unpredictable. We'll come down in October, Wade promised. Stay with Martha until the baby's born. Summer passed in a haze of preparation. Wade built a cradle from pine and lined it with soft furs. Beatrice sewed tiny clothes from cloth Martha sent up with a supply wagon. They talked about names and wondered if it would be a boy or girl and made plans for the future. Will it be a good life for a child? Beatrice asked one evening. Growing up so isolated, it was for me. Jack taught me everything that matters: how to be self-sufficient, how to respect the land, how to be honest and kind. There's no better education than the mountains. Wade put his hand on her swelling belly. And this baby will have something I didn't for a long time: two parents who love each other and show it. That's the most important thing. In late September, they packed up and rode down to Oregon City. Martha had prepared a room for them, and Doc Patterson promised to come immediately when Beatrice's time arrived. They settled in to wait. Thomas found them 3 days later. Beatrice was sitting in the boarding house parlor, knitting and feeling the baby kick when the door opened and he walked in. He looked exactly the same, handsome in a cold, polished way, his suit immaculate, his eyes calculating. But seeing him, Beatrice felt nothing but a distant contempt. "Hello, Beatrice." Martha appeared in the doorway, a cast iron skillet in her hand. "You need to leave, now. I'm not here to cause trouble, I'm here to talk to my wife." "I'm not your wife." Beatrice stood, her hand protectively on her belly. "I haven't been for over a year. I'm married to Wade Brooks and I'm having his child." Thomas's gaze dropped to her pregnant stomach and his expression darkened. "I heard you'd taken up with some mountain savage. I didn't believe you could sink so low. Mister, you better watch your tongue." Wade appeared from the back of the house, filling the doorway. "That's my wife you're insulting." "Your wife?" Thomas laughed, sharp and bitter. "She was mine first. That makes any subsequent marriage invalid. Not in Oregon. The territorial law is clear. She left you, established residency here, and legally remarried. Your claim is void. We'll see what a judge says about that. We already did." Wade pulled papers from his pocket. "These are certified copies of our marriage license and a legal opinion from a territorial judge confirming its validity. You've got no claim here, Whitmore. Go home." Thomas's mask of civility cracked. "She's carrying my property. Any child born to her is legally mine. Considering this baby was conceived over a year after she left you, I'd say you're mistaken about the timing. Wade stepped fully into the room, his presence suddenly dangerous. Now you can leave on your own, or I can help you leave. Your choice. You know who I am. My family has connections that stretch all the way to Washington. I could ruin you with a word. I live in the mountains. You can't ruin what you can't reach. Wade moved to stand beside Beatrice, his hand finding hers. Your power ends at the edge of the wilderness, Whitmore. And my wife is under my protection now. That means you leave her alone or you deal with me. Thomas looked between them, his face twisted with rage and something that might have been genuine hurt. I gave you everything. A mansion, servants, position in society, and you threw it away for this. You gave me a prison. Beatrice found her voice clear and strong. You beat me, controlled me, tried to crush my spirit. What Wade gives me is freedom. He gives me love and respect and partnership. That's worth more than all your money. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner. She squeezed Wade's hand. Goodbye, Thomas. Don't come back. Thomas stared at her for a long moment, and she saw the moment he finally understood that she was truly lost to him. His shoulders sagged slightly. I could make trouble for you. I still could. But you won't, Wade said calmly. Because you're a man who cares about appearance, and having your wife publicly leave you for another man is already embarrassing enough. You drag this through courts, and everyone will know she chose a poor mountain man over you and your fortune. That's not a story that makes you look good. It was the perfect argument for a man like Thomas. Beatrice watched realization cross his face, followed by resignation. Keep her then. I hope you're both miserable. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. Beatrice. For what it's worth, I did love you in my way. Your way involved fists and fear. That's not love. He flinched, and for just a moment Beatrice almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, and the chapter of her life that had been dominated by his cruelty closed with it. She sagged against Wade, suddenly exhausted. Is it really over? It's over. He won't be back. Wade kissed the top of her head. You're safe now, Beatrice. Truly safe. Martha bustled over, still clutching her skillet. Well, that was exciting. Let's get you sitting down, honey. All that stress isn't good for the baby. The baby. As if on cue, Beatrice felt a strong kick against her ribs. She laughed, teary with relief and joy. She was free, truly, finally free. And she had built a life worth living with a man she loved beyond measure. I want to go home, she said. Back to the cabin. I want our baby born in the mountains. Are you sure? Wade looked concerned. Doc Patterson is here, and Martha, I'm sure. The baby isn't due for a few more weeks. We have time, and I want our child born in our home, in the place where we built our life together. Please, Wade. He searched her face, then nodded. If that's what you want, then that's what we'll do. Doc, will you ride up with us? Stay until the baby comes, Doc Patterson nodded. For my favorite patients. Absolutely. Let me pack my kit. They rode back to the mountains the next morning, taking it slow and easy for Beatrice's sake. The autumn colors were spectacular, the aspens golden against the dark green pines. Beatrice breathed deep, filling her lungs with mountain air, and felt truly at peace for the first time since Thomas had appeared. No more running, she said as they crested the ridge above their cabin. No more looking over my shoulder. It's really over. It's over. Now we just focus on the future. Wade helped her carefully from the horse. Our future together. The baby came 2 weeks later on a crisp October morning. Doc Patterson coached Wade through helping with the delivery, and Beatrice labored through the day with the sound of the wind in the pines and the autumn sun streaming through the windows. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced, Doc laid him on her chest with a smile. healthy boy. Strong lungs. Beatrice held her son, tears streaming down her face. Wade knelt beside the bed, his expression awed as he touched the baby's tiny fist. He's perfect. He's ours. Beatrice looked up at her husband, this man who had saved her in every way that mattered. What should we name him? What about Jack, after the man who saved my mother, Jack Brooks? Beatrice tested the name and smiled. I love it. They named him Jackson James Brooks, called him Jack from the start. He was a healthy, happy baby who seemed to thrive in the mountain air. Doc Patterson stayed for a week to make sure both mother and child were strong, then rode back to Oregon City with promises to return in the spring. Winter settled in again, but this time the cabin was filled with new sounds: Jack's cries and gurgles, his laughing and cooing as he grew. Beatrice discovered that motherhood suited her. She loved nursing her son while watching snow fall outside the windows, loved seeing Wade's strong hands hold their tiny baby with such gentleness. He's going to be tall like you, she said one evening, watching Wade rock Jack to sleep. And stubborn like you, Wade replied with a smile. Poor kid doesn't stand a chance. The years flowed past like the streams that carved through the mountains, each one bringing new joys and challenges. Jack grew into a bright, energetic toddler who followed Wade everywhere, learning the ways of the mountains. When he was 3, Beatrice gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Grace. 2 years after that came another boy, William. The cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family. Wade built an addition with separate bedrooms for the children, and Beatrice cultivated a garden that provided fresh vegetables through the summer months. They hosted Nez Perce families who summered in the high valleys, and the children grew up learning from indigenous elders and playing with native children. It was a rich life, full of love and laughter and hard work. Martha visited each summer, bringing supplies and news from Oregon City. The town was growing, becoming more civilized, but Beatrice never felt the pull to move back. The mountains were her home now, deeply and truly. When Jack was 10, a letter arrived from Idaho. Wade's mother had passed peacefully in her sleep. Wade grieved quietly, taking long walks alone in the high country. Beatrice gave him space to mourn, then held him when he was ready. She would have loved the life you built, she told him. She would have been so proud of you. She would have loved you, Wade replied. She would have seen in you what she was, a survivor who became something more than her pain. The children grew healthy and strong, learning to ride and hunt and fish, learning to read from the books Beatrice taught them from, learning kindness and respect from watching their parents. Jack developed his father's quiet competence and his mother's quick mind. Sarah was fearless and bright, always pushing boundaries. William was gentle and thoughtful, more interested in drawing pictures of the wildlife than hunting it. They're good kids, Wade said one evening when the children were finally asleep. He and Beatrice sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, watching stars emerge. You've done well by them. We've done well by them, Beatrice corrected. They have your strength and your kindness. Those are the best gifts we could give them. Do you ever regret it, giving up civilization for this life? Never, not once. She leaned against his shoulder. This is everything I ever wanted, Wade. You, the children, this place. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Me too. He kissed her hair. Best day of my life was when you stumbled off that stagecoach looking terrified and brave. Second best day of mine. First best was when you promised no man would touch me again. And I've kept that promise. You have. You've kept every promise you ever made me. She turned to look at him, this man she had loved for nearly 20 years now. His hair was threaded with silver, and lines creased the corners of his eyes, but he was still the steady, strong presence he had been from the beginning. I love you, Wade Brooks, more than I have words to say. I love you too, Beatrice. Always have, always will. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the night sky wheel overhead, content in the life they had built together. Below them, the mountains stretched away in darkness, wild and free and forever. The years continued their steady march. The children grew into young adults who made their parents proud. Jack took over more of the ranch work, building his own cabin on the property when he turned 21. He married a Nez Perce woman named Mourning Dove, and their wedding was a beautiful blend of traditions that had Wade and Beatrice wiping away tears of joy. Sarah became a teacher, riding down to Oregon City each autumn to teach school, returning to the mountains each summer. She never married, claiming she was married to her independence, and neither Wade nor Beatrice pushed. They had learned that happiness took many forms. William surprised everyone by developing into a talented artist. His sketches and paintings of mountain wildlife began selling in Oregon City, then Portland, then San Francisco. He used the money to buy more art supplies and build a small studio onto the main cabin where the light was best. "Never thought I'd raise an artist," Wade said, watching William work. "Never thought I'd raise anything," Beatrice replied. "But here we are, three beautiful, capable adults who know how to think for themselves and be kind to others. I'd say we did all right." Grandchildren arrived in due course. Jack and Mourning Dove had 4 children who ran wild in the meadows just as their father had. The cabin complex grew into a small compound, multiple generations living and working together, supporting each other the way families were meant to. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Wade took Beatrice back to the ridge where he had proposed all those years ago. The view was unchanged mountains rolling away forever, sky impossibly blue, the world spread out before them in all its wild beauty. "I wanted to bring you back here," Wade said, holding her hand, "to where I asked you to spend your life with me. Best decision I ever made was saying yes. Best decision I ever made was offering." He pulled a small wooden box from his pocket. "I made you something." Inside was a delicate necklace, a gold chain with a pendant carved from elk antler in the shape of a mountain peak. It was beautiful in its simplicity. "Wade, it's perfect." He fastened it around her neck, his fingers gentle on her skin. 20 years married to you has been the greatest gift of my life. Here's to 20 more. And 20 after that if we're lucky." They got lucky. Beatrice and Wade lived to see their children settled and happy, their grandchildren growing strong, their life's work bearing fruit in the next generation. They grew old together in the mountains that had given them sanctuary, their love deepening with each passing year. On a morning in late spring when Beatrice was 68 and Wade was 75, he failed to wake up. He died peacefully in his sleep with Beatrice beside him, his heart simply worn out from a lifetime of hard living and deep loving. Beatrice grieved him with her whole heart, but she did not break. He had taught her too well to be strong. She lived another 5 years, staying in the mountains she loved, surrounded by children and grandchildren who cared for her with the same tenderness Wade had shown her so many years ago. When her time came, she went peacefully, sitting in her rocking chair on the porch, looking out at the mountains turning gold in the setting sun. Sarah found her there, a small smile on her face, the antler necklace around her neck. They buried her next to Wade in the meadow where wildflowers grew thick every summer. Jack carved their headstones himself, simple and elegant. Wade Thomas Brooks, born 1841, died 1916, he gave shelter and found love. Beatrice Ann Brooks, born 1854, died 1921. She fled west and found freedom. The cabin still stands, passed down through generations. Jack's grandson lives there now with his own family, running cattle in the high meadows just as Wade did over a century ago. The story of Wade and Beatrice has become family legend, told to each new generation as an example of courage and kindness, of second chances and enduring love. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the wind whispers through the pines, they say you can feel the presence of the couple who built this legacy, the mountain cowboy and the woman he saved, whose love story began with a promise that no man would touch her again, and ended 65 years later with a partnership that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger for it. It was, by any measure, a good life, a life worth living, a love worth having, and in the end, that's all anyone can ask for.